Welcome to Glacier Bay. My name's Ranger Emma.
And I'm Ranger Steve.
We are here at a -3-foot low tide, so areas that are not often visible in the park are visible today. And so we're out here exploring. We hope to find some really large sea stars like Pycnopodia and some other sea stars, maybe some sea urchins or different kinds of worms. Let's see what else we find.
So let's get started and start delving into this intertidal area. If you didn't watch our previous intertidal video, we did go over the tide pool etiquette in more detail. So I'm just going to briefly rehearse those today. Number one is we're going to explore tide pools from the edge. Number two is I'm going to step on bare rocks wherever possible. Our third point of etiquette is when I'm turning over rocks, I'm going to be very careful of the life. And I'm never going to force an animal free from its hold. And then the last one is I'm going to touch an exposed animal, I'm going to wet my hands before I touch that creature. So let's get started and let's go into that intertidal zone following our tide pool etiquette.
So we have here Pycnopodia, the sunflower star. It's one of the larger sea stars. They can actually reach almost a meter, about 3 feet across. And it is a big predator, known for eating other sea stars. Actually, they usually hang out in the pretty low intertidal zone, so way down low. They don't like getting stranded like this. Thankfully, the tide is coming back in right now that will soon cover this sea star. If you look closely, you can see all the little tentacly legs and the little vacuum suctions all along there that help this sea star move and capture prey.
This has some cool things on it. I've uncovered a rock and we have a multitude of intertidal creatures living on it. We're going to do a still photo and we're going to have you identify and see what you can spy on the underside of this rock. So I've been turning over some rocks and I've discovered quite a few things that live under these rocks. And one of the more exciting ones is this little spider crab, often referred to as a decorator crab. And they are called a decorator crab because this little creature will take bits of algae and glue it onto its shell. And what it's doing is it's decorating or it's camouflaging itself. It looks just like a piece of kelp when it's fully covered. But this is a crab that you can find under these rocks in the intertidal zone. Another group of creatures that I found under the rocks are some fish called gunnels. And these fish are long and thin. They look very similar to eels. They are very active when they're in my hand, but when you put them in a plastic container, they settle down. And they were very well adapted to live under these rocks because they are flattened. They can live naturally under the rocks, and the rocks will protect them from predators, but also from drying out. And then the third creature that I discovered under the rocks, a beautiful worm, segmented worm. This is, I would refer to it as a clam worm, and it's sort of transparent, so you can sort of see inside some of the body organs. What's cool about this area in the intertidal zone is the abundance of worms. And there's a worm that creates this cone. It's pretty amazing. I think this might be an empty cone, but it's made by a cone worm. And what this worm does is it takes bits of sand and it glues them together, forming this outer structure. And the worm will live inside there. I believe it's a filter feeder, but it's a perfectly shaped cone made out of beach sand. Oh, there's one in there. This is one of the cone worms. in its sand casing. Well, they both have worms in them.
Just like the last time we went tide pooling, we found sea anemones. Here, as the sun is shining on them, as the tide is low, they're all curled up, but as the tide rises, they will re-emerge and open out their arms to start feeding again.
Here we have a rock with some gunnels under it, but there's something new. I don't know what it is. The exciting thing about intertidal exploration is discovering things that you don't even know what it is. It is probably a type of worm, but there's so many different worms in this area that I don't know all the different species that survive here. Oh, now you can really see some hairs.
Oh, there's a pretty crazy worm under here. Oh yeah. I don't know what that is, but sort of long and skinny and red and blobby, and the color is absolutely astounding. You never know what you'll find when you turn over these rocks. Also, the neck of a clam, it looks like, right there. If you follow this curve, there's a line chiton.
So this isn't a creature, but this is the eggs of a creature. This is the eggs of the moon snail. And the way the creature makes this, it's called a sand collar, is that the snail exudes a glue with its eggs, and it glues the sand grains together, and embedded within the sand grains are its eggs. And we often find these deposited in the sandy areas of Glacier Bay this time of year. The intertidal area is a very difficult habitat for these creatures. These are marine animals, but for half the day they are exposed to the elements, to drying out, to terrestrial predators.
They have to be really strong and have a lot of special adaptations to survive in this really harsh environment, whether it's really wet or really dry. It was really fun though to come out and see these different animals as they were surviving in this dry environment.
Well, the tide has turned, it's starting to come in. Well, that will conclude our walk for today.
Thank you so much for joining us. We had a wonderful time.